Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at D-Wave Quantum. It is time for another update, and this is probably going to be the most important quantum stocks video you are going to watch for quite some time now, as we have been tracking a potential confirmation from the current lows we have in this larger correction. We have been looking for the initial 5-way move to the upside to look for a potential larger 1-2 setup, but based on the latest developments, on how this correction unfolded, on how we have reversed from the current lows, I believe we can track something much more interesting. I believe we can define more clearly our expectations for this chart, and I believe we can better identify when we should start to doubt this structure, when we should be looking for a failure rather than success. Now, before we do that, let's provide some context because it is quite important. And D-Wave Quantum is probably one of the more bullish quantum stocks on the larger time frame because it is still managing to build this idea of an impulse. And I have quite a few ways I could be tracking this structure, but primarily I would be looking at something like a series of 1-2 setups here. And this as a larger wave tree, well, this is where I am honestly split. I do not really care which interpretation is going to work out because I would have probably preferred to extend to higher prices within this as a wave 5. So I could consider that this wave 3 would have formed a top here, that this would be the wave 4 correction, and based on proportions, this wave 2 and this wave 4, it is a quite nice, quite perfect match even. But I would have actually liked to still track extensions to higher prices within this as wave 3, because the internal structure does allow for such an extension. I will continue to also consider this scenario, this option, and depending on how it further unfolds in this movement to the upside, this supposed wave 5, now it is going to be a wave 5 in either case, but depending on how it unfolds, I might prefer one interpretation or the other eventually. But one thing is clear, we are looking to extend to new all-time highs within this movement to the upside. This internal correction quite complete. We've had great estimations to when we should have expected a bottom to be in place, and I'm looking for the reversal now. So, in this structure, we have been previously considering that we would have the potential to extend to lower prices. We had already built a 5-way move to the downside within this structure, but of course, we wanted to track the next levels of resistance. So, we brought up this white interpretation, we actually extended what we had in place, and we have provided the resistance levels to be tracked. The red box is a structural resistance area. Fortunately, it actually seems we do not struggle too much getting through these levels, and that is also a feat of strength, but still we have gotten rejected at a 61.8% retracement. So realistically, there is still a substantial risk that this structure would form a reset, that we would get another low, as we only have a 3-wave move to the upside so far. There is no confirmation of a bottom being in place from this larger time frame, and a wave 4 could be complete. Nonetheless, I believe we can actually still track something quite bullish because we do not need to care about this larger time frame any longer, because from the smaller time frame perspective, we have managed to create what could be tracked even as an initial 5-way move to the upside complete. And I will show you in a moment the internal structure, but the main idea is that within this movement to the upside, we might have a confirmation that the bottom is in place. And based on my experience, when we get structures similar to this, where we failed to create a more clear confirmation of an initial 5-wave pattern to the upside, it is not rarely the case that the structure is instead building a series of 1-2 setups, a series that could allow a quite strong breakout to be occurring, a wave 3 from these levels could take us directly to new all-time highs. This structure is allowing me to actually look for something significantly more bullish, while at the same time, if we fail to extend directly higher from the smaller time frame pattern we have in place, I believe it to be a quite strong signal that this wave 4 would actually have the top here, that this wave 5 might be forming a reset. Now, it's no guarantee that it will happen. It might form something like a larger ABC structure, but it would be no pattern that I would consider reliable to be tracked. There is no structure that can be provided to us where we only get an internal reset in a failure literally to actually extend directly higher, where I would still have a good consideration for extensions to higher prices. So, previously we have been tracking some ideas for this being a 5-wave pattern. Technically, it is still a possibility. We have even identified quite correctly the path to the downside within this correction. We have an ABC pattern complete. We had provided in the previous video resistance levels for an internal wave 4, and we have extended to lower prices. So, what do we do now? Well, I would still allow this yellow scenario where we build a 5-wave pattern to play out. I would be quite happy with it because it would provide a large degree confirmation, but I wouldn't focus on it too much at the moment. I would also bring then, on this chart, these structures where we would have either a double 1-2-1-2 setup, where again the wave 3 could take us to significantly higher levels. We actually cannot tell at this time the degree this wave 3 would be able to extend to, or we might be building only a wave C in this movement to the upside. But even in this scenario, even in this structure, I would prefer to have a bottom in place quite strongly. If I am to build here a 1-2 setup, well, I would still expect afterwards a wave 3, a wave 4, and a wave 5. It could still be interesting in terms of returns in this movement to the upside alone. And it might be rather difficult to tell the difference between this wave C in orange and both the wave 4 in blue and the wave 5 in yellow. Interestingly enough, if we are to build a pattern that we could consider to be a wave 3 in blue, I would be rather certain though that it's not the yellow wave 5 building, because in this wave 3 in blue, I'm actually looking for an impulse. I'm looking for the momentum to pick up, not to slow down. Now, in the internal structure, I will be focusing on this trend line as a quite important trend to be held. I will not necessarily call for a top, for a failure based on the break of the trend line. I would still track the support levels I would have for a potential 1-2 setup in this area for that. But already, that is a sign that is preparing me for a more substantial top to be in place. As I was saying, within this structure, we want the momentum to pick up. If we are trading below this trend line, that would be the opposite signal. That would be signaling that this structure's momentum would instead be slowing down. And of course, I need a sustained break for this to be a stronger signal, because I could very easily see within something like a 1-2 setup to get a wick below this trend line. And again, I'm not using that as an overall guide for this structure. Now, let's take a look at the internal pattern. So, within this movement to the upside, it is actually quite difficult to be certain of a wave 1 top being in place. And as long as we still extend higher and higher and we break apart more and more from this trend line, it is going to be more difficult to actually look for a position, because our risk is quite substantial at this point, because I would be able to look based on the support levels I have on this chart for a descent as low as the 78.6% retracement from the current levels, and only with a sustained break below that would I be able to get my indication that this structure is rather going to fail. So I could be looking at a 15% drop before I would have a strong signal that this structure would be failing. Then for the case of the wave 4, well, unfortunately, for me to be able to track a clear 5-wave pattern, we actually haven't yet gotten into any of the wave 4 support zones I've been tracking in this overall movement to the upside. So I do not yet even have evidence that this has been the actual wave 5 of the wave 1. So for these reasons, I will be tracking potential extensions within this structure. I will be looking still for continuation to higher prices within, let's say, a yellow interpretation. And in blue, I will be looking for the support area for a wave 2 to be reached. And if this really is to build the strong wave 3 to the upside we are expecting, I would rather be prepared to have a more shallow retracement. Again, we expect the momentum to pick up if this structure is to build a wave 3 to the upside. It is within these waves 3 that we often do not even reach the area of support, where we often only get to the first level of support, and that is not a hard rule. It does happen that even within a wave 3, we get a larger correction, possibly even into the last level of support, but I would not assume that to be the default. Now, at this point, it seems likely that at least the wave 4 correction for this yellow count that I will be adding here in a moment would have started. We already see decent divergences within this movement to the upside that can allow us to consider even a top to be in place. So I wouldn't take that for granted. I wouldn't expect this wave 5 in yellow to still be coming, but I would also not be waiting for the largest wave 2 correction. Again, the trend line is quite important here. If the momentum isn't increasing in a more direct fashion, where we don't even reach it, I would expect to at least hold it typically. And for now, there really isn't much else to add. The quantum computing sector is extremely dynamic at the moment, and I will be watching extremely closely these opportunities and these structures as they further unfold. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoyed the content and want to support it directly, check out the channel membership, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.